This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain an adventure, drama, and sci-fi film called Prospect. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. A teenage girl named C writes a book while listening to music. She crosses out her notes, unsatisfied, and stares out the window where she gets a view of a nearby planet. C meets with her father, Damon, who's repairing their pod. C mentions an earlier announcement that their line will be shut down, making them stranded in the pod. Damon assures her that they won't be stranded as there will be 3 more cycles during their mission before they need to catch the slingback. Later, Damon prepares a solution that he drops into his eye before going to bed. While watching his daughter listen to music, Damon recounts how her mother broke her water before she was supposed to be born. He reminisces the first time he held her. Hearing this, C asks to go back to Kavaria, but Damon stresses that it's not their home. He promises that they'll be out of the pod soon. The next day, Damon wakes up and immediately takes some pills. They then strap themselves to prepare for their launch. Their pod detaches from the main ship, but the control panel starts to malfunction. The pod shakes violently, and Damon attempts to regain control. He releases the parachutes to stabilize their descent. C closes her eyes, trying to remain calm as their pod crash lands into a planet. Upon landing, C asks what happened, but all Damon knows is that they went off course. C figures out where they landed while Damon repairs the pod. When C finds their location, Damon orders her to suit up so they can head to their prospecting site on foot. Outside, C gazes upon the green forest with the air full of poisonous spores. Soon, they find an abandoned Arlac dig, so Damon checks it. Damon digs out a root-like object from the soil, slices it, and pours a solution on it, causing it to sizzle. When he pulls out an organic sack and carefully extracts a valuable gem from inside. Hearing how expensive they can sell the gem, C is hopeful they can finally pay their loan and return home. Damon, however, wants to continue to their prospecting site to ensure a better profit. C leaves to drain her bladder tank, but as she heads back, Damon warns her that 2 men are approaching the dig site. He puts her on mute as she sneaks her way back to him. She listens to their conversation, hearing Damon claim that he hasn't taken anything from the dig site. The men get rough on him just as C catches sight of them. She eyes their weapon, hoping to save her father. One of the men introduces himself as Ezra, who acts friendly while his companion rummages through Damon's items. Damon insists that he has nothing again, and the 2 force him to the ground. Ezra interrogates Damon about his ship, but Damon knows they'll kill him if he surrenders his pod. To save himself, Damon reveals that he has the location of the largest Arlac deposit called the Queen's Lair. He was hired as a digger by a mercenary crew who discovered the site. He then offers to team up to take the lair for themselves. After much thought, Ezra agrees to split whatever they mine there. While the 2 aren't looking, Damon switches to his and C's channel, instructing her to take their weapon and follow them. When he gives the signal, she will fire at the larger man. Nervous, C watches the 3 leave the site and carefully walks back to it to retrieve their firearm before following them. As she hides in the woods, she hears Ezra asking personal questions to Damon. Finally, Damon gives the signal, so she reveals herself while Damon steals Ezra's gun. Ezra is stunned to see the young woman, having never seen one on this planet. Damon demands them to drop their packs so they can rummage through them. Ezra tries to negotiate, but Damon demands that he unlock a locked case. C tries to convince her father to leave, but Damon is adamant about getting his spoils. Ezra unlocks the case, and Damon opens the case, revealing more gems inside. Suddenly, Ezra's companion gets up and shoots Damon, who fires back at him. The 2 fall to the ground, leaving only Ezra and C standing. C reloads her firearm, but quickly leaves when Ezra aims his weapon at her. Ezra hears Damon moaning, so he shoots him. C runs to the woods, now alone and grieving for her father. She walks back to their pod and attempts to leave the planet, but the engine fails. Later, the young woman rummages around the pod for food and water. She finds Damon's medicine and drinks one. The medicine uplifts her mood for a while. When its effects run out, C packs her things to head out. As she does, she hears movement outside, so she loads her firearm and aims at the door. The pod door opens and Ezra crawls inside. C immediately shoots him in the arm, but Ezra swipes the gun off her hands as she reloads it. Wounded, Ezra aims a gun at her and asks for a medical kit. C gets up slowly, then steals Ezra's gun. Ezra challenges her to either shoot him or help him. C instead offers a deal. She keeps him alive if he takes her to his ship and lets her go home. C argues that it's a good deal since he killed her father. Ezra demands for the medical kit first before he agrees. C watches the man struggle to mend his wounds, nearly feeling sorry for shooting him. However, she keeps him at gunpoint, aware of what he can do. Finally, Ezra reveals that his ship is also damaged, since his crew fought over the gems they mined. Ezra figures that the Queen's Lair and the merchants are real, so he offers to pose as a prospector they hired so he and C can mine the gems. C doubts his intentions, but he argues that the merchants will be less generous. Ezra points out that Damon stole the gem from their dig site, so he killed her father to defend his harvest. When C calls him a killer, he asks if she is too. After much thought, C lowers her gun and demands they split the profits evenly. The two walk to the Queen's Lair, with C still holding Ezra at gunpoint. Ezra recounts his past adventures to make conversation. When C accidentally drops the gun, she hurriedly retrieves it and aims it back at him. Ezra advises her to trust him, but she's not convinced. After walking for hours, Ezra takes a seat as his wound makes him tired faster. Suddenly, C spots another man in the woods. Ezra instructs her to lower her gun and not show aggression in case they're already surrounded. When the man walks closer, Ezra commands her to drop the gun and surrender. The man runs away, and C takes her gun. Ezra insists on following him since he needs more medicine for his wound. The poisonous spores have gotten to it, causing an infection. C stresses that they don't have time to do this, but Ezra claims they don't have a choice. C corrects him that only he doesn't have a choice. Hearing this, Ezra dares her to shoot him if she doesn't want to follow. Nonetheless, C and Ezra follow the man into his tribe. There, Ezra shows his wound and asks for help, but the guard refuses to let them enter with their weapons, so the two hide their firearms in the woods. Inside a sealed tent, the leader, Oruf, recounts how he was once a prospector harvesting Aralax, but he has long left that life. The two remain quiet as Oruf's son plays music and offers them drinks. C looks at the liquid inside the cup suspiciously, but Ezra assures her that it's the juice that cleanses them from the poisonous spores. Ezra then asks Oruf for more juice to cure his wound and supplies that they can spare. Oruf's son suddenly returns and lays out supplies in front of Ezra. Ezra opens one of the cases and finds Aralac gems inside. Oruf offers him the gems in exchange for C. The young woman tearfully watches as the men negotiate her fate. Oruf shares that they recently lost their mother, requiring another woman to rebuild their society. Hearing this, C runs. Before getting far, she trips on a root and is cornered. C undoes her captor's breathing tube, allowing her to escape. C retrieves her and Ezra's firearms and heads to the woods alone. She traverses the land for hours and tries to survive on her own. Suddenly, she hears Ezra's voice on her radio and searches for him. In the woods, she finds a tent and carefully investigates. Ezra quickly disarms her, then shuts the tent close to prevent the spores from coming in. He gives her food, which C happily takes. To her surprise, Ezra also offers his gun back. Ezra recounts how the tribe didn't help him without her to exchange. He attempted to treat himself, but failed. Now he needs his arm amputated, otherwise the poison will spread, but he can't do it alone. C asks if Ezra was going to give her to them, and he assures her that he wasn't. C helps amputate Ezra's arm. As she performs the procedure, Ezra has a panic attack, but fights to hold himself together. Once the arm is off, C covers his stump with the juice to disinfect it. Ezra notices that the girl is calm, so C shares that she worked at a meat factory when she was 12. After chopping most of the meat, she entered the body cavity to cut out the organs and the eggs without damaging them. After recovering, the two set out to the woods again, where they become friendlier to each other. C shares the story of the novel she's been reading, which is about teenagers leading normal lives. She lost the book, and the one she's carrying is her attempt to rewrite it from memory. C admits that she fantasizes about living in such an ordinary world. Damon was actually glad that she lost the book before, seeing it as merely a distraction. He wanted C to focus on learning more about their field, and the young girl is starting to think that Damon would still be alive if she'd listened to him. Ezra empathizes with her, advising her to blame him instead of herself. That evening, the two finally reach the mercenaries' camp. Ezra instructs her to do the job cleanly to avoid arousing suspicions. Soon, they show themselves to the mercenaries, who take their weapons. Ezra poses as Damon and tries to explain why they're late, but one mercenary plays music into their radio, drowning their voices as the mercenaries discuss. When the leader, Mikan, finally orders them to begin, Ezra negotiates to hitch a ride on their ship, but they disagree. Ezra offers to cut their profits, but Mikan stresses that they can't spare the excess weight on their ship. C suggests removing parts of the ship to spare some weight. However, they threaten them to start the dig. The woman, Inamon, trips C and holds her at knife point, pushing Ezra to begin. Unfazed, Ezra points out that the mercenaries won't get their treasure unless he digs it for them. Therefore, they must find a way to allow them a trip home. Finally, one mercenary suggests removing the backup thrusters to allow the two in their ship. Mikan agrees, and C is set free. However, Inamon turns off Ezra's filter to intimidate him until Mikan orders her to stand down. As they begin the dig, Ezra asks about the prisoner that the mercenaries transported into the planet. Mikan claims that he doesn't know the prisoner's crimes, just that they're supposed to let him die slowly of the poisonous spores. They take them to the Queen's lair, which promises abundant numbers of gems. Ezra cuts the roots and digs for the flesh inside. C assists him in extracting the gem from the flesh, but Ezra struggles to make the incision with one arm. He slips, causing the flesh to sizzle and melt the gem inside. After another try, Ezra makes the same mistake again. Mikan wonders if Ezra can't do it, and to defuse the situation, C does the extraction on her own, but fails as well. Mikan turns away, deciding that they can't do the job. Suddenly, Ezra slices Mikan's foot, causing him to drop into the dig site. He then pushes Mikan's head into the root, extracting the vile substance that kills him. Ezra takes Mikan's weapon, but drops it as soon as the rest arrive. He lies that Mikan slipped on his own, but the crew finds the wound on Mikan's foot. C quickly drops the bottle of acid into the root, causing an explosion. This allows them to retrieve Mikan's gun and escape to the woods. The mercenaries fire at them, and Ezra kills one of them. Inamon chases them into the darkness, and Ezra realizes that he's out of ammo. Ezra instructs C to distract the woman so he can attack from behind. C runs, but Inamon spots Ezra instead, firing at him. She tackles the woman, and Ezra jumps to them, but Inamon stabs him. Ezra stabs her multiple times on the neck, finally ending the fight. Ezra collapses, and C goes to him. Ezra tells her to leave him and escape, but C hesitates. Eventually, she takes Inamon's gun and flees. She reaches the campsite with the pod, only steps away. Instead, she goes for her kit. Another mercenary fires at her, but their prisoner escapes and kills him, allowing C to return to Ezra. She tends to his wounds and helps him into the mercenary's pod. They find the prisoner scavenging supplies from the dead mercenary. He allows them to pass, and the two finally escape the planet.
This is all for Story Recap for today. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Tell us in the comments if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Watch other of our videos showing on the screen and leave a like because it helps the channel. And I would see you in the next video. Goodbye.